Have you ever heard a story so wild, so packed with monsters, gods, and heroes, that it feels like it has to be a blockbuster movie? Well, today we're diving into one of the original action epics, the myth of Perseus and Medusa. This isn't just a story about a guy with a sword and a scary monster. It's a tale of destiny, betrayal, divine intervention, and a quest that changed the world. So grab your snacks, get comfortable, and prepare to journey back to ancient Greece, where heroes were forged in the face of impossible odds. Our story begins not with a hero, but with a prophecy. King Acrisius of Argos received a terrifying message from the oracle. He would be killed by his own grandson. Terrified, Acrisius did what any paranoid king would do. He locked his only daughter, Dano, in a bronze chamber, hoping to prevent her from ever having a child. But you can't cheat fate, especially when the king of the gods, Zeus, is involved. Smitten by Dana's beauty, Zeus visited her as a shower of golden rain, and from this divine union, our hero, Perseus, was born. When Acrisius discovered the baby, he was furious, but feared the wrath of the gods if he harmed them directly. So, he put Dano and the infant Perseus into a wooden chest and cast them out to sea, leaving their fate to the waves. It seems like a grim start for a hero, right? But destiny had other plans. The chest washed ashore on the island of Siriphos, where a kind fisherman named Dictys found them. He took Dano and Perseus in, raising the boy as his own. Years passed, and Perseus grew into a strong, courageous young man. But trouble was brewing. The king of Siriphos, a cruel and scheming man named Polydex, who was also Dictys's brother, became obsessed with Dano. He wanted to marry her, but she refused, and Perseus stood fiercely in his way, protecting his mother. Polydex knew he couldn't just get rid of Perseus without causing an uproar, so he hatched a devious plan. Polydex announced he was going to marry another woman and demanded that every man on the island bring him a gift, specifically fine horses. This was a trap. Perseus, being a poor fisherman's son, had no horse to give. Feeling ashamed but full of youthful bravado, Perseus rashly declared he would bring the king any gift he desired, even the head of the Gorgon, Medusa. This was exactly what Polydex wanted to hear. He took Perseus at his word, sending him on what he believed was a suicide mission. Now, who was Medusa? She wasn't just any monster. She was one of 3 sisters known as the Gorgons, but she was the only one who was mortal. Once a beautiful woman, she was cursed by the goddess Athena. Her hair was turned into a writhing nest of venomous snakes, and her gaze was so terrifying that anyone who looked directly into her eyes would instantly turn to stone. Slaying her was considered an impossible task. How could a young man, with no special powers or equipment, hope to succeed? This is where the story gets really epic. The gods were watching. They saw Perseus's courage and the injustice of his quest. They decided to help. The goddess Athena, who had her own complex history with Medusa, and the messenger god Hermes, appeared to Perseus. They knew he couldn't face Medusa alone. They told him he would need special weapons, which were guarded by the Stygian nymphs. The problem: no one knew where these nymphs lived, except for their sisters, the Grae. The Grae, also known as the Grey Sisters, were 3 ancient women who shared a single eye and a single tooth between them. Finding them was Perseus's first challenge. Guided by Hermes and Athena, Perseus journeyed to their cave. He waited for the moment one sister was passing the eye to another, then snatched it from their hands. Blinded and desperate, the Grae begged for their eye back. Perseus refused until they revealed the location of the Stygian nymphs. With the secret location secured, he returned their eye and continued his journey. Now equipped with vital information, Perseus found the nymphs. They were much more helpful than their sisters. They gifted him with 3 incredible items essential for his quest. First, a pair of winged sandals that allowed him to fly through the air like a god. Second, a magical bag called a cabeces that could safely contain Medusa's head, as its power would persist even after her death. And third, the most crucial item of all, the cap of invisibility, also known as Hades's helm, which would make him completely invisible to his enemies. But the divine gifts didn't stop there. Hermes gave Perseus an adamantine sickle, a sword so strong it could cut through anything, even a Gorgon's scaly neck. And Athena gave him her own highly polished bronze shield, instructing him to use its reflection as a mirror. This was the key. He could see Medusa's reflection in the shield without looking at her directly, thus avoiding being turned to stone. Armed with these divine artifacts and a clever strategy, Perseus was finally ready to face the monster. Flying on his winged sandals, Perseus journeyed to the end of the world, where the Gorgons lived. He found them sleeping in their lair. Using the polished shield to guide his way, he identified Medusa among her immortal sisters. With his heart pounding, he approached, invisible thanks to the cap. He couldn't afford a single mistake. Looking only at her reflection, he raised the adamantine sickle, and with one swift, powerful stroke, he severed Medusa's head from her body. The quest wasn't over yet. From Medusa's neck, 2 incredible beings sprang forth, the winged horse, Pegasus, and the giant, Chrysaor. Medusa's 2 immortal sisters awoke, enraged by the death of their sibling. They screeched and hunted for the killer, but Perseus, wearing the cap of invisibility, was nowhere to be seen. He quickly placed Medusa's head into the magical bag and, with the Gorgons hot on his heels, took to the skies on his winged sandals, beginning his long journey home. On his way back, Perseus had more adventures, but the final confrontation awaited him in Siriphos. He arrived to find his mother, Dano, and his adoptive father, Dictys, hiding from King Polydex, who had become even more tyrannical. Perseus strode into the king's palace, where Polydex and his followers were feasting. They mocked him, refusing to believe he had succeeded. "You want proof?" Perseus asked. "Here it is." He averted his own eyes, reached into the bag, and pulled out the head of Medusa. The king and all his wicked courtiers looked upon it, and in an instant they were all turned to solid stone. With the tyrant gone, Perseus made the kind fisherman Dictys the new king of Siriphos. He then returned the divine gifts, the sandals, the bag, and the cap to the gods, and he gave Medusa's head to his patron, Athena. She placed it on the front of her shield, the Aegis, where it became a symbol of her power, a terrifying weapon against her enemies. And what of the prophecy that started it all? Years later, while competing in an athletic competition, Perseus threw a discus. A gust of wind carried it off course, and it tragically struck an old man in the crowd, killing him instantly. That man was none other than King Acrisius, his grandfather, who had fled his own kingdom in fear. The prophecy had come true, proving once again that in the world of Greek myths, you can never escape your destiny. And that's the incredible saga of Perseus and Medusa, a story about how courage, cleverness, and a little help from the gods can overcome even the most impossible challenges. It's a reminder that true heroes aren't just born. They are made through the trials they face. What do you think is the most heroic part of Perseus's journey? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this mythological adventure. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into the amazing world of myths and legends. Until next time, stay curious.